Alright, welcome back to another episode of Manga Club. This is the series where I delve into manga that I've never read before, and I discuss it in videos like these. We're trying something different this time because I am actually not scripting this one. For all the previous videos, I've scripted them, and I felt that you could kind of tell they were scripted, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just not sure if it's exactly the vibe that I'm going for with this series here. So I figured I would go with a bit more of a conversational style, just kind of chill out a little bit more than I usually would, be a bit more loose with it, and just see how it works. So what we're gonna do for this episode, and we're gonna see how it works out, we're gonna see if I like it or not. I'm just kind of gonna go through my notes, point out some of the key things that I thought were cool, some of the stuff that I think is really interesting to keep in mind going forward. And whereas before I was really big on making sure that I got all the big story beats in there, I'm not going to focus too much on that because, let's be honest, if you're watching this video, you've probably already read this stuff. In fact, if you're watching a super small channel like this about a topic that you're into, you probably just got done reading and you're like, ooh, let's see what people think about this. So like, you know what happened. You know what happened. We'll still go over it a little bit, but like, it's not going to be a focus of mine, you understand? But this is also really interesting because it's the first video that I'm doing of Manga Club that is not a first impressions type video. Because everything else I've made up until now, JoJo, One Piece, and Chainsaw Man, they've all been the first 3 volumes of each of those manga. So it was me largely kind of introducing the story in the video as well as to myself, recapping things, talking about, you know, the main characters that were introduced and the major themes and the art style and the stuff like that that seemed to be being set up. So it lends itself to a video being very easily written because you can just kind of recap like, okay, so this is what this story is about, and this happens and then this happens, and we meet this character, and now we have our main cast. It's very easy to kind of fit it into that format, but when you move on to something that's beyond the first few volumes, and you're kind of already set into motion, you already know the characters, you already know the basic plot, and now things are just developing, it's a bit harder to fit into that format, which is another reason that I was like, okay, let's see how this goes without a script. Let's kind of just have a discussion here. I mean, that's what this entire series is about anyway, is having discussions. So I think it might actually fit pretty well for me to just chill out and talk about it. That being said, let's move on with our discussion of Chainsaw Man Volumes 4 through 6, and that is chapters 26 through 52. Of course, spoiler warning for the aforementioned chapters, and if you have any of your own opinions you'd like to share, feel free to do so down in the comments. So the first thing I kind of want to touch on before we get into any of the new stuff that was introduced in this set of volumes is some of the characters we've already been introduced to and kind of where they're at in the current place in the story. And I want to start out by talking about Makima, because she is scarier than ever. Which of course we first see in the 4th volume when we thought she was dead, and in fact I'm pretty sure we literally watched her get shot in the back of the head, but she's completely fine. And it becomes increasingly clear throughout this and the next 2 volumes that either she has a contract with an extremely powerful devil, or she herself is some kind of devil or other entity that maybe we haven't been introduced to yet. It's really unclear, and it's really, really mysterious. And there was always kind of a subtle feeling of intimidation, this fear in the background when you saw Makima. But that's no longer in the background. That is in the forefront now. She is scary. She very clearly holds a lot of power, not only just in the organization, especially now in the middle of these chapters, she was actually granted power over the merging divisions that are now going to form the 4th division. So she not only holds power in that way, but also supernatural power, some sort of devil power. She's able to seemingly control and contort people remotely. I don't know what you would really call that, like a kind of telekinesis, but for people and people's vital organs. The other devil hunters that we were introduced to, minor characters so far, Kurose and Tendo, I think were having a conversation about how the devil that she has a contract with is like super secretive. It's kept under tight wraps. Nobody is privy to that information and nobody's allowed to talk about it. So that could be the truth, but it's almost starting to feel like she doesn't have a contract with the devil. She herself is the devil, or at least the source of the power. I don't know. There is certainly more to her than meets the eye, is the point. But then something that's really interesting and I'm very curious about is the manga almost seems to be trying to get the reader to sympathize with Makima as well. Denji and Makima actually end up going on a movie marathon date, and it's kind of wholesome. Like, I feel like I'm being gaslit here. It's like, all this time it's like Makima is dangerous, Makima is scary, Makima is a monster, and then all of a sudden it's like Makima is going on a sweet little date and look how cute her outfit is, and it's like, what are you doing to me? And that might be the intention. That might be the intended feeling that you're supposed to have. I'm not certain. Because we even see her cry at one of the movies, and I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if that's her putting on a performance, trying to appear like she understands human emotion more than she does. I don't know if that's an actual humanizing moment for her, showing that she does have emotions inside of her, even if on the exterior she's bottled them up or kept them inside. You know, it could be kind of a commentary on the fact that she has been trained herself so well to fill this leadership position and be this cold, calculating leader who is able to make the decisions that she needs to, that these fictional stories and movies are really the only place she feels comfortable in letting out any actual emotion. Or, like I said, it could be the case that that emotion's not real. Maybe she knows what she's supposed to feel, and these movies are almost a way for her to understand the human experience a little bit better, understand how to manipulate people a little bit better. It's really unclear right now. But as I expected, when I first started this story, her character continues to get more and more intriguing as we go on. I knew there were going to be tons of questions surrounding Makima, and I knew I wasn't going to get them answered, and in fact, was probably just going to get more questions thrown on, and that's exactly what happened, and I'm not even mad about that. To me, she is still one of the most interesting aspects of this story, and something that is keeping me genuinely curious throughout. He also does mention at one point that they have like a legitimate lead on the Gun Devil now. This is interesting for a few reasons, because for one, I mean, it drives the plot forward. We know that we are maybe one step closer to actually meeting the Gun Devil, but also the scene where she mentions this comes closely in tandem with a scene with Denji where he's having a nightmare. We learn that these seem to be recurring nightmares that involve this locked door, and he hears Pachita's voice telling him not to open it. It's very ominous. It seems to be like it might be some kind of premonition or some kind of prophecy that he's seeing. Maybe something, I don't know, from the past, something symbolic inside of himself. That has not been explored almost at all yet. We were kind of just teased about that element so far, so that's a new thing that we're definitely gonna have to keep our eye open for, but it's very spooky. I like it. Then we have Power, and Power actually very closely relates to Denji, especially in these volumes, because they're becoming kind of the perfect little dynamic duo. I gotta say, I love Denji and Power so much. I am so happy that they're turning them into just this pair of dummies that they think they're like the coolest, smartest, most tactical geniuses on the planet Earth, and they are just these bumbling fools, and I'm in love with them. Actually, quickly talking about one of the new characters that we have is Kishibe, who is the renowned devil hunter who has been training Denji and Power thus far, trying to get them to hone their powers a little bit better, because up until now, they have a lot of power, but they're not necessarily good at actually focusing that power. They're kind of just loose cannons. They let their whims guide them, and usually that works out because with as much power as they have, not many creatures on this earth can actually stand up to them. But knowing that they're probably going to be coming up against much greater threats, Kishibe has been throwing everything he can at them in hopes of actually getting them to finely tune their powers a little bit more so that in the future they won't run into issues. So because of this, as well as the already established team that was formed between them, they've been spending a lot of time together, and all that time has been really fun to spend with them. And in fact, toward the end of the last volume that I read, it actually started to seem like they might be, maybe, this is only a maybe, just a little, they might be setting up some kind of relationship between Denji and Power. They almost seem to maybe share a few romantic or flirty glances or something like that. I don't know. I might have just been picking up on something that wasn't there, but I swear I saw it and I was like, are they doing something here? Are they setting something up here? I don't know. It wasn't a big thing, but it was just something that I noticed. Because of course we know that Denji's relationship that he was hoping he was gonna have was sorely cut short. This boy literally cannot catch a break. I feel so bad for Denji. From the first page of the first volume, the first chapter of Chainsaw Man until now, I have not stopped feeling so bad for Denji. Like, they cannot just give this boy a break. But we'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to finish off talking about our already existing characters by talking about Aki a little bit and where he's at. He also continues to be one of my favorite characters because he is very clearly at this point a genuine person. Like, it seemed pretty clear from the time we met him, but especially now, I think it's safe to say that he's not really an insider. He's not, like, with Makima. He is a genuine person who cares about those around him. He wants the best for humanity. He wants the best for his loved ones. And he's a very sympathetic character. He's one of the most sympathetic, if not the most sympathetic characters in the entire manga. And there are almost no moral quandaries about him. There are no strange, odd behaviors. There are no things to sort of overlook. Aki is just kind of a genuinely good person in most senses, and so we may not get quite as much comic relief or quite as much conflict as far as his moral character, but what we do get is a lot of internal conflict, and I think that's what keeps him actually interesting and not just kind of bland, because I don't think he's bland. I don't think he's a boring character just because he's pretty morally good. He has a lot going on, and I think Fujimoto has done a really good job thus far of showing his internal conflict as to actually keep his character interesting. I think the whole character arc that he has going on the side of all of the big stuff that's happening, with him grieving over Himeno, having flashbacks, thinking about the memories he's had with her, all of that hits pretty hard. And I think the hospital scene, especially where he was like just crying into his hands, that hit for me. Like, seeing him so distraught was genuinely pretty heartbreaking. Of course, about midway through, he makes a contract with a devil called the Future Devil, and this devil tells him that as long as he lets him live in his eye, he can use the devil's power, and that's because the devil is able to see a gruesome death in Aki's near future, and he wants to witness it for himself. That does not bode well for who I just said is one of my favorite characters. But am I surprised? No, because it seems like people aren't allowed to have happy endings in this story. It is wild though, because we already know that Aki's lifespan has been cut down very short by the cursed sword that he used. And later on in this span of chapters, he ends up touching the angel devil, and we know that his lifespan is now even less than it was before. So Aki kind of just continuously keeps getting more and more of his life chopped away. And to be honest, I think the whole motif and the whole theme with him and cigarettes and the conflict he has between smoking and not smoking is not only a good way to represent his relationship and his memories with Himeno, but also it's a good representation of how hopeless he feels and how kind of resigned he is to the fact that he's going to die soon. Again, bringing up the hospital scene, there was a moment before he put out the cigarette where he realized how little time he had left and immediately started lighting one up. I couldn't help but immediately think that that was representative of him kind of giving up and realizing there's nothing he can do. He's using this substance that is well known for diminishing people's lifespans and kind of relinquishing himself to it because he knows no matter what he does, he's done for in not too long of a time span. It's almost reminiscent of something like a Shakespeare tragedy where you hear people talk about something that's so interesting about those being that they tell you what's going to happen in the beginning. You see that there's going to be a tragedy in the beginning, and the real interesting part is seeing how that plays out and how those pieces fall into place to make the perfect ugly storm. And that's kind of what Aki's story feels like right now. It feels like a tragedy. It feels like we're watching a very, very sad tale play out in real time. And there's nothing we can really do except just be along for the ride, just like Aki. So yeah, I love him, but man, I am not excited to see what happens to that dude. That's pretty much it for all of the recurring characters that we already know, other than, I guess, Kobeni, because she doesn't have a major role, but she did actually do quite a bit of work in slicing up the gunman with her knife. She showed a little bit of that talent that Aki mentioned before, and I was wondering, like, oh, what's he mean? Like, oh, she's talented. Oh, well, she can run like she's in Assassin's Creed. I guess that's what he meant. And also, I just... I wrote down in my notes, she gets asked why she didn't quit the division like she said she was going to, and she responds with, well, we get our bonuses soon. And I was like, okay, Kobeni, maybe you're alright. But aside from that, that's all of the recurring characters. But we do have a few new characters that we haven't really been introduced to yet. And so I'm going to go through them one by one and just kind of talk about what I think about them so far. Not exactly new characters, but Sawatari and Katana Man were characters that were finally kind of actually brought into the story in the 4th volume. I mean, especially considering we didn't even know her name was Sawatari before the 4th volume. Of course, she might not actually matter that much because we saw that she was killed by her own Snake Devil. I'm not sure what will come of this because we did see that the Snake Devil was able to spit the Ghost Devil, which had previously merged with Himeno, back out, and it was still fully functional, but it was just under their team's control, either Sawatari, the Snake Devil, unclear exactly who. But the thought in my head is perhaps part of the contract that Sawatari had with this Snake Devil is, in a situation of danger, the Snake Devil could swallow Sawatari to keep her alive, but she would therefore be placed under the Devil's control and not really have much agency over her own actions if she eventually was regurgitated and started living again. I have no real way to confirm this, it's just what I think could be the case. But the real big one is Katana Man, because Katana Man was kind of introduced as the foil to Denji. You have Chainsaw Man and Katana Man, the good and the evil, and they're fighting it out. And that is what it is at first. He seems very intimidating, and he is very intimidating. And Denji and Katana Man get into a huge fight that takes them all over the city. They're just having a full-on shonen battle. It's really cool. It was fun to read, but at the end of it, Katana Man kind of ends up looking like a joke. Like, he gets Denji. He does get him, like, really good. For a second there, he gets him. But then his intestines basically get spilled all over the train, and then as soon as he's back in his human form, he kind of ceases seeming like a threat really quickly. There's the really funny scene where Aki and Denji just take turns kicking him really hard in the balls while the police are showing up. And then once the police do show up, we don't really see any more of Katana Man after that. It seemed like they were gonna set him up to be this big antagonist, kind of like, you know, the Vegeta to Denji's Goku. It seemed like that's what it was going to be, but he fell off the radar pretty quickly. I would be disappointed about this, but fortunately, we got what I think is a much better Vegeta for Denji. Yes, I think it's time we talk about Reze. Now, Reze is a character that I absolutely love so far. She is such a cool combination of, like, really charismatic, and I almost want to root for her, but also so intensely scary and creepy and weird. But she's also a really tragic story, like most people in this manga, I guess. I don't know if I'm just gullible, but when she was first introduced, I had no inkling of suspicion about her. Like, I was so happy that maybe, just maybe, Denji finally found someone that he could just like and have, like, a cute little normal relationship with. I guess I'm just stupid. I don't know, you gotta tell me if you suspected anything from the jump, because when she started being all weird, it genuinely caught me off guard. Like, I didn't think she was gonna be a villain. That being said, as a villain, man, Bomb Girl is sick. Literally just, like, creating explosions and punching explosions into things is like that's like hacks. Like, you're hacking the game. Like, that's not allowed. That's too OP. That, like, bomb jumping is, like, #1 on the list of things that I need to make sure that I check out when Season 2 of Chainsaw Man is eventually animated. Even just her design as the hybrid form is so incredibly cool. It seems very reminiscent of a xenomorph, actually, like the head part of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was inspiration there, because I noticed in the beginning of all of these volumes, there are little notes that Fujimoto actually writes underneath, like, the first page, and a lot of them are him saying that he loves different horror movies, so it literally would not surprise me at all if Alien was one of those movies that he really loved and took some design inspiration when he was drawing Bomb Girl, because, like, that was one of the first things that jumped out to me. It was like, whoa, that looks like a xenomorph. And then on the note of Reze being kind of the perfect counter for Denji, I think she really pushes him to the limit, more than he's ever had to go before to actually secure that win. Like, first of all, chain arms. Denji has unlocked a new power in the skill tree, I guess. He can do chain arms now. That's awesome. But then also, I wrote down in my notes, I have to say, we've seen Denji pretty fucked up before, but never to the point of literally just being a torso and a head. Bomb Girl going ham. Yeah, that's accurate. Denji was out here just looking like a frozen chicken being carried around. That is how good Bomb Girl is at absolutely destroying who we've seen as this, like, indomitable, unstoppable force until now. And I guess Bomb Girl is the immovable object that he's come across. We saw Reze get impaled and killed at the end of the 6th volume, but I mean, she's a hybrid just like Denji, and if there's one thing we've learned, it's that they can come back from just about anything. As long as they have blood, they can come back. So I really doubt that Bomb Girl is gone from the story for good. If she was, I would be really disappointed, and I don't think they would cut it that short. I think she's going to come back, and I think she is going to be a reoccurring character, whether she's a villain or she gets reformed and recruited, but I do feel pretty confident in thinking we're going to see her again. I'm leaning towards Reformation arc being the direction we're going, because we did actually get a bit of backstory from Reze, and like I said, as most characters, it's pretty tragic. We know now that she was some kind of Russian experiment. I don't think we got too many details about what kind of facility that was or what they were trying to do. I mean, we know that she was a test subject, but did the test go wrong or right? Was the goal to create human-devil hybrids, or was something else the goal and this just happened to be the result? We don't know for sure yet, but we know that that was her past, and she was kind of just born into this life as an experiment, as a weapon. That kind of backstory usually lends itself really well to a character being reformed and sort of learning the intricacies of human nature since they weren't able to as they were a child. So in a typical story, I would say that's what they're doing with her, but Fujimoto just, he loves defying expectations, clearly, so I don't know what to think. Like, I don't know what to expect with this story. That's a good thing. I just want to point out, this is a good thing. I feel constantly like he's throwing me off, and like, I can never let my guard down with Chainsaw Man, because it's constantly just throwing, like, crazy stuff at me. But that's about as much as I can say for Reze as of right now. I do just want to give special props, though, because the few pages where the entire manga suddenly switched to Russian singing while Reze calmly killed that guy on the roof and was just walking around the environment while, you know, Russian text was on the page. Yeah, that was haunting. That was like really well done. That was the most jarring thing that has happened this entire story so far. I was so taken aback. I felt like I was just smiling from ear to ear, because I was like, this is weird. Like, this is crazy. So, you know, props for that. That's another thing that's gonna be really, really cool when it's animated. Just saying. I guess I should briefly also mention the Typhoon Devil, who appears to be a devil that either lives in water or is the water, but we know practically nothing about its power, and it's gotten barely any screen time at all, so I feel like I can't say too much about that. Just note that it's there, and Reze seems to have some kind of connection to it, but that's all we know for right now. And now we've talked quite a bit about the villains in the story, but we also got introduced to a few new protagonists that are on the Division 4 team. Specifically, we were introduced to the non-human members of Division 4, and there are 4 of them that we know of so far. I'm going to mention the 2 that I don't really have as much to say about right now first, and that is the Spider Devil, this humanoid devil who kind of looks like a creepy, Sadako-ish girl, but she can transform herself into what I can only explain as like a fleshier form of Quelaag from Dark Souls. I don't know, it's cool. We'll see where it goes. There's also Violence Fiend. He wears like a weird, like, it's like a hybrid of like a gas mask and a Plague Doctor mask. It's cool looking. He's cool looking, but again, we don't know too much about him right now. He was in a few other scenes. He had a couple funny moments actually, so he might be a comic relief character. I don't know if we're gonna get more from him, but again, cool, sure. But then the 2 we actually have gotten a little bit more from. First of all, we have the Shark Fiend. His name is Beam, who is a fiend that is a humanoid that can transform himself into a giant, weird, mutant shark that can swim through anything, including like buildings and floors and stuff like that. He's wacky, he's weird. He teamed up with Denji in these few volumes, and he's like obsessed with him. Like, he looks up to him like Denji is his god. And I don't know, he's just a silly little himbo guy. So far, all I can really say about him is he deserves the world. He seems stupid. I love him. Probably like the peak of this entire series was Denji riding him in shark form like he's a horse around buildings and stuff. It's just, that's one of those moments where you remember that this series isn't entirely just darkness and edginess. It also is sometimes not afraid to just be really silly and just super over the top, and I love it for that. And then finally we have Angel Devil. He's the one who more than any of the others seems to be being set up as a bit more of a major player in this story. He's a humanoid devil, but he has angel features like wings and stuff. And he's completely cooperative with humans. He's docile. He's not violent towards humans. But if you touch him, then your lifespan is reduced. And this is what happens to Aki later on in these chapters. So we see it in action. And he mentions that I think his lifespan is reduced by a few months or something like that. So he still isn't completely harmless, but he definitely isn't hostile towards humans. Still though, I'm really starting to like him. I had to warm up to him, I will say. I wasn't entirely sure how to feel at first, but he's growing on me. He really is. I think he seems maybe a bit more intertwined with the innards, we'll call it, of the devil hunting organization. Like towards the end, when Makima and the Angel Devil killed Reze, we see that, you know, obviously they clearly work pretty closely together sometimes, but we don't really have any idea how deep this goes, or if it goes deeper at all. It might not. But yeah, he's cool so far. He's definitely not a people person. This is brought to the reader's attention because there's this whole allegory that runs pretty much throughout the entire second half of these volumes, where Angel Devil talks about, you know, there are city mice and there are country mice, and talks about the story of those two and how they clash with each other, and how he's a country mouse and he doesn't really want to be part of all of this hustle and bustle. He doesn't want to be in the middle of all of this trouble, and more than anything, he kind of just wants to be off on his own, living peacefully. And I really do think so far the team that's kind of being set up between him and Aki is a really good contrast to the loud and bombastic characters that we usually get, because these are the two that are a bit more reserved and they're a bit more willing to just be a bit more solitary. I think Fujimoto is doing a great job of foreshadowing a really nice friendship between those two. Or maybe a little bit more, if you know what I mean. Listen, I'm not gonna say anything, but the way Aki looked at him when he grabbed his hand like that and saved him from flying away. Come on now. Come on now. The point is, I really like their dynamic, and I really like Angel Devil as a character so far, and that's another one that I'm keeping my eye on to see where Fujimoto takes his character, because I think it could go some really cool places. But yeah, that's pretty much it for these volumes of Chainsaw Man. I feel like I went over most of the major points that I wanted to get across, and most of the stuff that I'm wondering about right now. The obvious questions right now are where Reze's character is going to go, considering she was just killed by Makima. How the Typhoon Devil is going to play into the story. It seems like they might be hinting at some kind of mind control, so we'll see if that's the case and if that makes an appearance later on. And of course, probably the most mysterious question of all is, what are these nightmares Denji is having actually about? How important is this to what's going on in the real world? And what could possibly be behind that door that he's seeing? These are all questions that I hope to answer going forward as I read on. But for right now, I'm just keeping them in my mind and enjoying the ride as I go. Because yeah, I'm absolutely loving Chainsaw Man. Like, I already really liked it the first time I picked it up, but especially now, I think it's getting so good. I think it is getting so intensely cool and interesting and fun, and it's just making me want to read more and more. So I'm definitely going to do more of that soon. But that is going to be the end of this episode of Manga Club. I think next time I see you in one of these, it is going to be a follow-up to the One Piece episode that I did previously, because it's been a while since I did that. I originally did the first 3 volumes of One Piece. Somebody brought up that it might be better to do it arc by arc, with that series being how long it is and how well known the arcs are. So I'm going to figure that out and hopefully get that recorded soon enough. So if you're interested in that, which a lot of people seem to be, that one is getting a lot more views than I usually get. And I also hope to see you in the next Chainsaw Man installment, and all the others if you're interested. God, is the subscribe button. I don't know. I'm walking here. Alright. I'll talk to you in the next video. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so stupid. Whatever, it's fine. Peace.